I was 6 years old when I moved to Abu Dhabi. Ever since I was little, I loved cool temperatures, but Abu Dhabi welcomed me with a scorching sun. When I went back to school, I was introduced to the word climate change. A group of presenters came into our class and talked about how the ice caps were melting and the polar bears were losing their homes. At only 6 years of age, this caught my attention, for I loved polar bears and I didn't want to live in a world without them. Then the presentation talked about the consequences of our heedless actions, and I felt anxiety gripping my neck. They talked about the rising sea levels, extinction of species, and the increased rate of natural disasters, and I found myself completely terrorized by climate change. I thought to myself, if I can't handle the heat here in Abu Dhabi, then what would those cute polar bears feel when they lose their entire habitat as a mere consequence for what we did? Looking back at 2010, I started believing that the human race had no hope. I didn't want to be roasted to death or devoured by the seas. And then the presentation grew on to talk about the simple solutions and how everyone in the room could make a difference and save the entire world. And from that, I decided to make a change. I confess, the change within me was short-lasted. I went on to live my indifferent life and completely avoided the topic altogether. After all, who wants to hear something so hopeless? And then I grew apathetic, and I believe I can relate with many of you in the audience who felt the same way. But then my connection to climate change deepened when I visited my homeland, New Delhi in India. Observing hazardous amounts of pollution filling the clean air with grief and disease brought me back to my senses. People with face masks were scattered everywhere, and this was even before COVID-19. People were helpless. Transportation services were closed and schools were shut. Seeing so many people in distress showed me how climate change doesn't just affect the lives of polar bears, but is affecting the lives of people there in India and all across the world. And when I felt their pain, I was able to change my attitude towards climate change from negligent to determined. I started doing some research, and I wanted to know a way in which we can get people engaged. For if an audience is engaged, we have solved more than half of the problem. But the question is, how? Let's start off with a simple experiment. Notice the way I talk and tell me which way you like the most. All right? According to the IPCC, the average concentration of carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere topped 411 ppm. Changes in the Earth's atmospheric abundance in greenhouse gases and solar radiation and in land surface properties is altering the energy balance. We need rapid decarbonization of approximately 800 gigatons to avoid the RCP 8.5 scenario. All right, let's try something a little bit different. We are heading towards an inhabitable Earth. We are going to face severe droughts, intolerable famine, vast economic collapses, monster storms, devastating wildfires, scorching heat waves that will cook us under a blazing sun. We only have a limited amount of time. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. If not, we may bring hell to earth and eradicate all our kind. All right, which way did you like better? Probably neither. The first one confused, like, can you please speak English? The other fearful, like, please take me out of here. This simple experiment shows the flaws that we have in climate change communication. And according to a study by Perstoknes, there are three main psychological reflexes that kick in whenever we hear anything related to climate change. The first reflex is distance. Climate change feels abstract in terms of both time and space, and this makes it hard to grasp. It feels like a future problem, making us less willing to act on it in the present. Climate communicators use examples of polar bears which are heartbreaking, but nevertheless irrelevant to our daily lives. Next, there is doom. The doomsday narrative through which media has consistently and constantly portrayed climate change as a looming disaster has affected the younger generation, leading to a new phenomena of eco-anxiety. Feeling like we're under a constant threat makes us fearful of the future, and this isn't a good way to motivate individuals because after that fear is gone, we want to avoid the topic altogether. And according to BBC, after 30 years of scary climate change communication, more than 80% still use disaster framings. The media articles still use disaster framings. This doom and gloom view on climate change is one-dimensional and unproductive. Next, the next reflex is denial. People start denying climate change, climate science facts, and climate change science to find inner refuge from guilt. They start feeling that why should they bother if no one else does, and that their sacrifice won't make a difference. And then they avoid the topic altogether. And after much reflection, I found out that my attitude towards climate change at the age of 6 wasn't my fault, but the fault lied on the individuals that introduced me to the topic of climate change. Now, these psychological reflexes kill engagement, but how can we look further? New research shows how we can effectively flip these three defenses into three successful engaging methods. First, we can flip distance into personal by connecting what people care about to climate change. And the thing about climate change is it can be related to anything from public health, agriculture, economy, and more. Instead of using images of polar bears in an Arctic without ice, we need to use images of people that are affected by the climate crisis. Even better yet, we need to use images of things and objects that people value. This could be their homes, family, and etc. And by connecting what people care about to climate change, it helps them have a sort of personal connection to climate change and makes them even more motivated to take action. Next, we can flip doom into hope by accentuating the positive. According to the World Economic Forum, India, France, UK, and China have announced to end the sale of fossil cars by 2040. And according to internationalagency.org, Germany generated 41.3% of its electricity from renewable sources. More people are generating electricity from solar panels than ever before. These stories are the ones that fill the audience with optimism and hope. They show that the bright future is near and that change is not only happening around them, but it's happening globally. Next, we can flip denial into tailoring signals that show our progress. An app called Ducky is an app that motivates individuals and businesses to show the impact of their actions in everyday lives and motivate them to take action towards environmental action. Your choices make a difference, says a CEO who helped create the app. And from this app, you and your friends can compete to save the most CO2. Cool, isn't it? Now, as one could see, these successful engaging methods are the key in engaging people with climate change. It is true, however, that individual solutions are not sufficient enough in solving climate change alone, but they do build a stronger foundation for policies and solutions that do, and that is why engaging people with climate change is so crucial. Before, we tested 2 ways of communicating climate change, but there is another way, and that reevaluates the way we think about climate change. The key lies in thinking about climate as something you love, something you will never allow to change, and something that affects every single person. Climate change isn't about something that's far away from us. It is about this thin living air that surrounds 7.4 billion people on this planet. And inside of this thin, fragile atmosphere, all of life is flourished and protected. The way we communicate climate change is crucial to change our perceptions and help us value its importance. Human values play an important role in shaping our beliefs and concerns about climate change, and these values can be portrayed in stories that inspire us to keep fighting. The communication of climate change lies in letting go of feelings of abstractions and doomism, but instead choosing to tell new stories. Because facts, they leave you. Doomism frightens you, but stories, they stick with you and they motivate you. These stories are about the steps we take in fighting climate change as a society and in caring of the environment despite strong resistance. Will we ever find a way to live sustainably on this planet? This story hasn't been written yet. We are writing the story right now together. Thank you.